The very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Ferrier podcast, where I will sit down and converse with the superstars, the overachievers, the masters of our craft. Each episode will be a deep dive into their personal philosophies, their habits, the tools they use, and the secrets to not only their success, but overcoming failure as well.
First, find somebody you can mimic, then find somebody you can stand, and then try to focus on one style until you master that style.
So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too.
People say that you shouldn't define yourself by your work. That is not true.
You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough.
This podcast is for all of you out there who share my passion for the job and the desire to always improve. These interviews will put you in touch with the inner workings of the role models we all want to emulate. So let's get to it.
There's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Welcome, everyone. A little shopkeeping before we start. I am excited to announce that Chris Gregory's new book, For the Want of a Nail, The Shoe Was Lost, is now available for purchase. This book is a memoir focusing on the many influential mentors who helped Chris along in his incredible career. There's also a series of questions that Chris sent out to the still living mentors and the responses to those. Signed copies are available through Chris personally, and unsigned copies are available through Amazon. Today I'm speaking with Olivier Dufresne CJF, and I'm still not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Olivier hails from my neighboring province in Canada called Quebec. And Quebec, they primarily speak French, the other official language of Canada. And although I did learn, and all Canadian students learn this language in our schooling, mine has become a bit rusty, to say the least. Quebec has a very strong association called the AMFQ, which is strong in no small part because of Olivier. He was the president of this association for several years, and Quebec has many clinics and contests and certifications, and you will typically find Olivier in the background doing something to make the event better or run more smoothly. Ollie is always about education, and I knew I had to have him on here to share his story. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. I'm sitting here today with Olivier Dufresne, CJF, and I have met you a few times over the years. You come to so many clinics, and you travel quite a ways to do that, and I know you are super keen about educating yourself and educating others, so that's why I thought it would be great to have you on here. Also to have a voice from your province, which I have yet to, well, I guess Ray Matthews is out that way, but to have a francophone tell their story, I thought would be good as well.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Well, thank you for doing this. So I guess to start, I don't know how you got your start. How did you get into shoeing?
So later on in my 20s, early 20s, I started riding with a friend, the friends that I met, and we were just trail riding, going in the woods, and it was just so great, She had a few horses, and a few friends got together, ride and play hide and seeks in the woods. So that was kind of how it started. And just after that, I had bought a horse, and of course it needed feet done. So first few guys I looked all right. And then one of those guys told me about how he got started, which he went to Oklahoma Horseshoeing School in Purcell, and that kind of got stuck in there. And after I wanted to take a holiday later on, so I took 2 months off and went to school, and just to kind of see if I liked it, and came back and never looked back, I guess. Just kept working at it.
That's cool. So what did you do before that as a job?
I was a baker. I was a baker for probably 10 years. Before that, I worked in a bakery, early morning hours and doing loads of
Oh, wow.
breads and weekends. And so it was kind of getting hard after a while with the lifestyle, and I really needed to be out there. And being my own boss is really something I've been doing all my life, basically. So it just kind of flew one into the other, and it just happened where there's not that many farrier out my way, and so it was just, I guess, welcome in the area.
Oh, cool. And in your area, what type of horses are you mainly working on? Is there a specialty or is it all disciplines?
I'm kind of probably 40 minutes from the highway up in the little mountains, little hills, I guess you would call them. So it's mainly rural and probably an hour from Gatineau, an hour from Ottawa. So it's really private ranches with 1, 2, 3, 4 horses, and then closer to Gatineau, there's a few barns out there. A little bit of everything, a few little low-level dressage, and then schools, and mainly people have fun having their horse, So it's a good clientele, really.
Oh, good. And do you still have a horse?
No, I don't have a horse anymore. I sold it probably 3, 4 years ago because I didn't ride him anymore, and he was just getting fat. So such a good horse, I didn't want to see him waste. I still trim him, and once in a while we still ride. So it's fun.
Oh, do you? Oh, cool. Yeah. And when you came back home after school, did you just hit the ground running or did you apprentice with somebody else?
So when I came back, of course, I was still a baker, and for a few years I had to bake to make my living, because you just can't just come back out of school. You don't have any clients. And I remember the first few months, somebody asked me to shoe their horse, and the first horse I was shoeing here, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Right, the first one after school, you're like, oh, that seems like.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of realized that I needed to just get into it, and more information was needed. I started asking around, find an older gentleman. He was probably in his 65 then at the time. He had a big stock trim and draft horse, and he had still some smaller horse to do. So I started trimming with him, and that was kind of how I got into some interesting cases, because that clientele, right, those big draft horse, they're done like 3, 4 times a year. You take massive amount of wolf wool all over, and they tie in. They know their job. They just jump in the stock, no fights. It's pretty well done, but it's kind of hard work, and it's not what I like to do anymore. I guess I like the smaller horses.
Yep. No kidding. Now, you don't shy away from hard work when it comes to hand making stuff. I know you like to compete a little bit, don't you?
Well, I guess competing is really part of the education. That really pushed me to just get better. For me, competing is really getting better for my own personal good. I mean, we're all competing, and we're all just learning with each other. I mean, beating the other guys. Of course, it's fun to have a ribbon, don't get me wrong, and we're going for that in a way, but just being there, learning to see feet, learning to see shoe shape. I mean, every contest you go, you make a shoe for a foot, and it's still maybe sometimes weird, but it brings you that much more depth into your everyday working. Everything is related to improving your skill at the horse. And if it wasn't for competing, I mean, when the clock is ticking, you got to clinch. And so in my everyday work, I take my time, but once in a while you have a horse that, you only have 10 seconds before he's going to pop those, or you feel he's going to just jump, so you're just in and out, and that's done. There's no time for messing around. So everything is kind of related to that. It's just a nice way to learn, I guess. That's the part of handmaids. And then, of course, you have to read a bunch to complete that stuff, because it's only one part of the trade, right?
Yeah, for sure. There are some of us that are stronger in the reading portion and less so in the forging, and then others who are vice versa. But it really is a combined thing, isn't it? And especially if you're going to pursue the certifications.
So certification is a big part of the process just because it's a test in itself. I feel that any test out there is pushing you to learn. So, and I guess I was kind of lucky to jump in with some people that just showed me that, you know what, it's going to be over soon. You're going to drive back home. You're going to do your thing. And so it doesn't matter. Just jump in, just do it. Just go for it because you're going to gain so much more. Maybe I'm lucky also. I met some guys that were really nervous before a contest, and of course I am nervous too, but it's just a little bit, and it's a nice nervousness, you know. Certification, yeah, we get carried away, but certification is just another nice way to learn that's present here in North America right now, right? We have the CF, the journeyman, and there's a bunch of other stuff, you know, other little diploma, I guess you can take here and there, and all those clinics in itself. The letters CF, CJF, or whatever else is, I guess to me, is meaningless if you can't apply the knowledge. I mean, explaining what you're doing to your clients on an everyday basis, it's hard. I mean, when those people are telling you, don't drop those heels, or they really well they don't understand what they're talking about, but how are you explaining to them, or are you just doing what your thing and it's fine? I guess dealing with the client is huge in our business, and the more you are able to put words on what you do, the more you gain their confidence, and the more they trust you, and then you're just there to do your job, and that's how it runs usually, right?
Yeah. I really found that I was able to speak a lot more confidently after going through the process of doing certifications with clients and with vets too. But you always do run into those clients who, even if you kind of explain that you know what you're doing, still have some ideas kind of set in their head, like what heels are supposed to, like what height they're supposed to be and stuff like that. How do you handle that situation when they're telling you to leave heel?
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. Yeah, well, usually the vet I'm working with don't tell me that, but they're more on the opposite, right? No, I guess it is hard. It is hard because they have their view. I guess it's really trying to piece the puzzle together, and at the end, you're still the one trimming the foot, right? And it comes back on your shoulder if the horse is doing well or not, whatever the vet says. And it's hard to be humble enough to listen through the BS or the stuff we don't want to really hear, but they have good stuff that we need to take the input. So taking the time to read those pieces and put them into your trimming and shoeing plan is big. And of course, communication is key, just telling them what's going on. Yeah, it's case by case, and confidence working with people after a while. It's hard when you're starting out, or when a new vet comes in and they have a different opinion, for sure.
Yeah.
Having the horse working well is the end result after all.
That's the proof. Yeah. Well, and how did you start your certification journey? Did you know right out of school that was what you wanted to do, or did you kind of learn about it later?
So after school, I knew that certification existed, but I thought, of course, I was just too green for that. And after a few rides along, I started working with that old guy, and we did draft shoes. But of course, I met some other people when I joined the association in Quebec. And in this association, of course, you meet some certified people and some journeymen, and you go to clinics, and then you meet some clinician, and then you travel a little bit to the States. So you do a few rides along with these guys, and they tell you their story of how it went, and that's inspiring. And just, I guess, being in that community just made it clear that I had to go through the process, which took me probably 3 times at each test, and honestly, I don't regret it at all. Every time I had to focus, every time I had to do better and to work on some aspect, I guess, the first time it's kind of hard. Everything is so new. After once you've done it, you redo it, and usually it's okay. I guess each of us have or our own level of difficulty. Either it's the manual or the reading, and but it's a process, and it's all stuff pretty basic that we need to understand. I mean, as horseshoers, farriers, we need to understand all of what's going on in the in the legs, right? The horse.
Yeah, of course. What are some things that you think kind of changed for your shoeing from going through that process? Are there any things you learned as you went through it that kind of stick out in your mind?
I guess the process of certification is one part, but everything from shoeing, being exposed in competition and seeing other work, of course, you tend to shoe with bigger feet, trim the back part of the foot to where it needs to be, and understand more how the foot, the function, and how you should address all of that. I guess looking for detail is a big one. Horseshoeing, there's so many details that you can't take everything in at once. So you work on little things, and then you improve. Then those things get better, and I guess it's like looking at a foot. It's a masterpiece of the nature, right? And a masterpiece is a collection of perfect details. So when you're trimming, trying to just do everything at once doesn't make sense. You have to look at every aspect one by one. It's not that much longer, but it's a conscious process of what you're doing. When you're trimming a foot, right? Let's say you have a foot between your legs, you're trimming. Person comes and asks you, "Hey, was the angle broken back or broken forward?" You're trimming, and then can you answer that question? I mean, did you look at the foot before you picked it up, right? And all those things, of course.
Yeah.
At first, it's stuff that until somebody asks you that question, then you realize that, oh, maybe I need to take a step back here and look at one thing at a time.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I've learned more, I've found that through that process, I look higher and higher up the limb and pay attention to more and more of conformation and everything else. Whereas you're right, in the beginning, when I was apprenticing, all I did was look at the feet. And sometimes when you're working for somebody, you'll go through so many horses, you don't even recognize the horse's face. You could recognize them by their feet, but once you get to a certain point. But I really found that as I learned more and more, especially about the anatomy and conformation issues, then I started to look higher. Like then it was to the fetlock and then to the carpus or the hock. And so that part has been really interesting. And also meeting people through that process of certification, the conversations that you have kind of at dinner afterwards or whatever, or in between goes, it's amazing how much I've learned to look for after those conversations. Like people will point something out and I'm like, oh, I'd never really considered that. And then you start to see it in the horses you're doing day to day.
Absolutely.
Now, I remember you would come to that clinic that I did out in Ottawa when the topic was breakover. And I feel like that's a fairly important topic to you as well.
It's a fairly important topic to all of us that are manipulating hoof and foot function.
Yeah, right.
I guess the breakover is just one part of the stride. It's really important, and I'm glad you mentioned it. I mean, for me, seeing hoofs is being able to think about every part of the phase of the stride independently, because how we trim and how we apply the shoe might have some effect at one part, not at the other part, right? When the foot lands, it might be fine. When you load, that's when we all know that's when the foot has the more force and impact in that foot, right? Because it's harder to hold the body up in the air than propel it forwards. That's why at mid stance we have so much force in that foot there. and then that body moves over, that foot is still on the ground, and all those flexor apparatus are bending and getting ready for breakover. I guess breakover is a point, I don't know if you guys agree, but it's a point in time where the flexing apparatus is going to give way to the extensor in time, because after the heels lift the ground, that foot is going to be propelled forward by all the ligaments that have an energy return mechanism, right? By being bent, they just snap that foot forward, but then the extensor muscle need to put all that limb forward, right? In order to be ready for a foot landing again. So understanding the phase of the stride is really, really important.
And I guess with vets and clients, it seems breakover is always the focus. And then they kind of forget about the whole back half of the hoof. Is that something you find too?
Yeah, good point. Absolutely. And it's a great question. And the way I answer it is we need to think around the distal interphalangeal joint, right? We need to think around this. So when you're overloading that toe there, those heels on the diagonal are crushed. If you have a medial toe that's too high, that lateral heel is going to suffer. And so that is, to me, in part, is called balance. I know, I love that word in a sense but we need to define what it means. And to me, balance is the way we trim the foot, the way it affects the coffin bone, the third phalanx, and the way it acts with the ground. And that is pretty important. And it's not a mystery. It's not sorcery. It's the fact that the coffin bone just rests evenly with no pressure points, I guess. And through the landing phase, mid-stance, and breakover. And that's a lot to ask for us. I mean, there's so much going on, right? I mean, we are asked to put shoes and they want their horses to go well, but all of that needs to be taught, and all of what we're doing has an influence on those phases. And more, I'll just throw one more, and at the time we should see hoof in fourth dimension, right? The fourth dimension being time. Because we're showing that horse now, it needs to still be going in 6 weeks. So I think we need to empower ourselves to say this horse needs to be done in 4, because as you see that foot, those proportions are not already achievable at day 1. So if we wait 6 weeks, it's going to be crushed for another 2 weeks, right? So I guess by that we're saying that a shoeing interval is one of the things we have control over, and we should use it to improve our hoof quality.
Yeah, I really like that concept. I've never heard that before put that way, like the fourth dimension. That's really cool.
Just to mention that, because think about it, the hoof is growing constantly, right? You look at it, you see a picture of the hoof, of course, but really at the cellular level, an hour later, it's a little bit different. What's interesting is in a few months what's going on. But of course, the foal has a small hoof, it grows, it changes. The older horse has a totally different hoof. I mean, that is influenced by everything that has happened to that limb in the course of the horse's life, right? So changing our approach as the horse ages is also us being proactive and seeing changes before it's too late and the horse is lame.
Yeah, no kidding. What are some of the things that you look for in a foot?
Great question.
I know you said you really wanted to talk about this stuff, so I know it's hard in an audio format to discuss feet, but I know it's something you're passionate about. So what are some of the indicators you look for that tell you, hey, I think I need to change something for especially as this horse ages?
Well, so to me, we see those horses every now and every 6 or 4 weeks, whatever. The center of rotation is one big aspect. So those proportion front to back. So when you look at the foot from under, you have the apex of the frog, the true apex of the frog, and then just a small inch, just closer to an inch behind that towards the heels, usually you have the center of rotation, and those proportions front to back, when they are respected, when they are applied, then you give the opportunity to the coronary band to grow well, to grow in a relaxed way, right? I've seen a
Right.
lot of feet that, well, and we've all seen those feet when they come to you at first time, and those heels haven't been trimmed, that toe is forward, and I call it kind of a migrated toe. Those are amazing how they come back when you start trimming to center of rotation. And sometimes those first few times you need to trim them every 4 weeks, because you can't trim those proportion and have the horse lame. Of course not. The horse never should be lame.
Yeah.
But so if you
Right.
can't get those proportion, you need to come back a little bit quicker. In another order of idea, if you have this hoof that's really close to proportion, you trim it, you have usually an even growth, you nip all around, whatever, a 1/4 inch or 3/8, and 6 or 7 weeks later, you come back and you do the same thing. Those horses have more proportionate, and they are wearing a little bit more evenly.
Right.
That enables, in the same token, it enables the sole to grow. Because if you have those proportions, usually your coffin bone is in good relation with the ground. It's evenly landing, loading, and so the whole sole can grow, right? The sole is like a volume; it's like a cup. So when your toe is migrated, that's flat, then your coffin bone is kissing, is sniffing the ground, right? That's not
Yeah.
good.
Nope, never good. No.
So I guess looking for proportion in the feet, a good way to go about it is to imagine your feet when you're looking at it lateral, and imagine the X-ray of that foot. Where is that coffin bone? Where is that joint? Where is the foot pivoting from? And of course, in difficult cases, you need X-rays. But a lot of times you can gauge, and those proportions are nothing to be followed by millimeters. But when you have the proportion right, it usually is not far from what it should be, I think.
And so I've heard a few different ideas on what that proportion should be. You know, there's some people who say 50-50. I've heard 60-40. What do you try to achieve?
There you go. And I challenge myself all the time. I was more into 50-50, but sometimes I feel it brings me to bring that shoe back a little bit more than I want to. So I guess some horses will do well with the 55-45, and of course trying to rocker that toe or roll that toe, and that brings those proportion back. And no, that's a tough one, really. I guess it's amazing how some feet. Well, and the other element, right? And I've heard it in a little webinar that stuck to my head, is sometimes the inside is your limiting factor, right? You can do whatever you want to the foot, but sometimes inside the structures are too far gone in some way, and you'll be facing a time where that hoof can't improve anymore.
Right.
That's part of what happens too, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you prefer using shoes to meet those proportions? Do you find it easier to meet those proportions with shoes, or can you do it with a trim just as easily?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think in a few cases you'll need shoes to really help, because those horses really need some protection in order to be able to function. And I guess it's the point of the owner. Does the owner uses his horse if he wants to ride? Some cases you need shoes. If the horse is just eating and just staying in the field, a lot of time it's fine without shoes. And in some cases, well, those shoes are going to be needed just because he's doing so much better. I have this old guy there. He has some clubby little feet, and we need to put shoes in the winter time. Otherwise, he doesn't move. He doesn't go to drink. He would just die there, really.
Really?
So just those front shoes, little bit of grip, and he's confident, and he goes, he's fine. But he's not being ridden. But So that's one of those cases where sometimes they need help. Otherwise, mostly barefoot. If you have the time, barefoot, you need the environment though, right? Winter is a great environment for restoring feet because they have sole support that is constantly renewed. The feet are clean. They're cold. They're supported. They don't break. Of course, when it's fly season, it's not the time. I mean, they're outside stomping all day. It's breaking, and so environment is a big one.
Yeah, for sure. And you get quite a bit of snow out your way, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of snow out here. There's
During
still
the winter.
snow right now.
Well, it is all melted here. Yeah, I do find that I have so many feet that I look forward to the winter to, like, especially like you said, after fly season. I can't wait for the winter to rejuvenate those feet if the opportunity arises or they're not going south or something. One thing I wondered, so it's kind of a contentious issue with meeting those ratios for either side of the center of rotation or articulation. How do you feel about heel extension out the back of a front foot or out the back of a hind foot, or do you approach it differently?
Yeah, good question. They're absolutely different. Front and hind are totally different. It's a good question because we are being told that length is leverage, right? Well,
Yeah.
it depends on which way it's going to pivot. We all agree that an inch of toe is going to be more leverage than an inch of heel extension, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, I don't know, probably we have to make some studies, but
Yeah, I was going to say some people might not.
well, that's a good point again. So that's something I wanted to say. We can talk about horses all day long, but sometimes we need to have one individual in front of us to talk about this individual at this time. So if we have a club foot, of course that inch of leverage is going to kill him. But if we have a long, slopey foot, leverage at the heels, I like to roll my heels, spoon my heels a little bit. I feel that when they land, especially in the 4 or 5 weeks down the road, if they grow a heel height, that landing is being kind of compromised, in my opinion. So rolling those heels a little bit, it just helps landing and avoiding that 2-step landing.
Yeah. Less of that slap, right?
Yeah, that slap is like P1 and P2 coming down P3 on the wrong angle. And if it's broken forward, then P1 and P2 are kind of pushing a little bit too high on the extensor process, therefore pushing that tip down, and then kind of and not helping with sole growth at the apex because the blood flow is restricted.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you'll actually, you said you spoon your heels. Like, say you've got a horse that likes to pull shoes off the fronts. Will you spoon them aggressively, or you just kind of taper it a little bit so that, like you said, you don't get that 2-stage landing? But do you find that really helps with the shoe pullers?
Absolutely. For the shoe pullers, I'm not too aggressive at all with that, and I don't pull a bunch of length behind that and spooning it, but just rolling. Yeah. I don't mind, like once we've trimmed flat, rolling that heel a little bit with my rasp or just burning it, or either just spoon the ground surface of the shoe sometimes. Of course, you don't want to make any sharp edges there, but I guess nothing too aggressive because it doesn't need to be that aggressive. It just a little bit of change there is. I really love those 3D shoeing where they kind of roll in there with a little bit of a wedge. I know wedges have a bad rep and I don't use many, but in some cases they help a lot. I find that the bad part is the landing phase, right? We talked about it. So when you apply one modification, you have to check those phases of the stride. That wedge at landing in a few weeks, if those heels are not in the right spot, is not helping there. So rolling that shoe, just kind of rolls into it. And then when the horse is standing, of course, it should be rocked forward. We all agree. And yeah, but that sounds like it's rolling.
Yeah. I can't remember what clinic I saw where that concept really got driven into my head, and I started doing a lot more rolling of the heels for that very reason. Now, when you brought up wedges, do you always put a packer underneath when you put wedges on? They fell out of fashion for me for a while. And then I started having vets request it in certain cases, and they really did help. But I always made sure to put something underneath. Do you find that you need to as well?
Okay, so once again, we need to have a horse. So I had a Canadian horse with it. No, but it's true because sometimes I do and
Yeah,
sometimes
you're right.
I don't. Because
Yeah.
example, this Canadian horse needs bar shoe and a little bit of wedging. He's going up heels. We want to see if it's better. His foot is super nice. He has pain inside somewhere. He doesn't need package. I mean, to me, his foot is, the arc is
Right.
there. But on the other end, if you have I have a thoroughbred mare that I always put some because I feel her foot is just the pancake. And I mean, the bunch of different things I've tried, it's not too bad, but I feel I'm at the point where I can't improve that foot anymore. And I need to put everything I can to help her. So some impression material or some silicone under it's really trying to get some load off the wall and distribute it to the bars through the frog. And so I guess it depends on the situation and the time.
Mm-hmm. Nope, that's a great point. You had said with wedges, as they grow, you're affecting the landing phase, which, yeah, that makes sense. When you put a wedge on, I can't remember where I had learned this. A lot of people say that they shoe with more extension when they put a wedge on. Does that make sense to you?
Once again, I guess we have to see the case. In
Yeah,
the case
for
of the horse,
yeah.
I'm seeing that foot was sort of upright. I didn't want to put a bunch of extension. It's fit
Right.
pretty tight, sort of thing. But for me, I mean, we're doing we're trying to help a horse that has navicular. The biggest thing is not to let it go more than 6 weeks. Of course, let's do it 4 or 5. I'd rather trim him every 4 than shoe him every 6 or 8 because I forgot, right? It doesn't make sense. Because after 8 weeks,
Right.
my shoe is going to be hindering what I'm trying to help. So there is some cases I refused to shoe the horse because I knew it was going to be like I wasn't coming back. The follow-up wasn't there. And that it's not I don't want to be in that position. So yeah, sometimes I guess you just have
No.
to say no.
Yeah, for sure. We were at the clinic on the weekend together, and we were in the same group. So we were both there when Travis was talking about the gimmicks, because we had some vets in the group with us. He was talking about how so many gimmicks kind of come in and go in the shoeing world. What are some of the ones that you've seen come through? Maybe ones that worked for you, and then other ones that you were like surprised that they were embraced for as long as they were, and then just disappeared.
I don't think I've been shoeing long enough to answer that. Once again, some copper shoe, let's say some copper shoe, do you think it's going to really help? Or and I don't know, there's some weird stuff that probably have their one place. That's the thing, though. At times, I
Right.
try to see, like the glue on shoes. I'm not a fan, and I don't want to push it. I'm not really handy with it, but I think it's super interesting. I want to understand what's the benefit, how we can help. I mean, I don't like somebody who says, yeah, he's going well because it's a plastic shoe or whatever. It's the trim, it's the placement. I mean, it could be aluminum, it could be steel. I guess some advantages from the plastic shoes for sure, like grip and movement. And that's where it's getting interesting. But understanding why it's going well is the the interesting part in that, right?
Right. So it really does go back to having that fundamental knowledge to even know whether or not it's how or why the gimmick would be working in the first place,
Absolutely, absolutely.
I
And
guess.
yeah, it comes back to basic all the time. We don't say it enough, and it's the basic trimming. Understand the effect we have on the feet, and just being able to observe and to see what's going on. It's more than a challenge, I guess. They've been doing it for years, and I guess they were doing it way more than we did when they used horses before cars. I mean, they had to go to work and they had to eat. So these horses needed to work. They knew what they were doing. They didn't have any plastic stuff or dim or whatever. It's just
Yep. Yeah, no kidding. Allie had mentioned that you went to the Workman Games this year, or last year, right? Was it this
it
year?
was already 3 years ago, I think.
Was it? Oh my
Well,
gosh.
when was
Oh,
it?
wow. Yeah, it was
2019,
pre-COVID.
19? Yeah, pre-COVID 18. Yeah, I guess traveling is big, and going to Europe is something I haven't done enough. I only been once or twice in Europe as a farrier, and I want to go back. I want to see France as well, because there's so much knowledge in that culture. I've learned in the States, I've learned with all of us over here that have like all American and English background. The French side is kind of interesting too. I mean, it's a whole part of history too. They were a bunch of guys forging shoes in the militaries back then, and these guys they were working 2 strikers on an anvil in rooms with probably like 20 forges in a row with 40 anvils and smoke and horses, and it must have been wild to see that back then. Those guys were really forging. When you see a French person or whatever, whoever, it's English but make a French hind out of, let's say, 8 inches of 3/8 by 2. I mean, that is forging. Everything is drawn out. Everything is just hammered and placed and set and forged out of that little piece of steel, drawn out to make those branches and those maslet clips. And so that was a good lesson to see those guys from France forge those shoes. I mean, it kind of is a different side of it. It's not just taking a piece of section and bending it. It's really putting it into life.
No kidding. Yeah, we had a brief conversation about how kind of the French background, there's a very strong military component to it. Did you say you actually have a couple of the textbooks or something from France?
I don't have much. I'd love to get my hands on more stuff. Really, it's just recently that I'm just getting to know more of by a few clinicians that we had over. By the way, I should mention like the contest Écrit Junior, which is it's a contest for apprentice in France, and Claude Lortie in Quebec. He's a journeyman farrier. They're really really involved in learning for the apprentice. And so the Écrit Junior is a few apprentice or vet and farrier. They get together and they do a case study. They present it, and the winner gets to go to Euro Equi, which is a big conference in the autumn. So I guess that's a really nice part of Quebec that we have the chance to travel to France. And don't get me wrong, it's not French. Any person who goes to another country in another language is such a good opportunity to get into a culture of farrier from a different perspective, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, just when you think you understand one side, you can see a whole new aspect of, or way of looking at it, I guess, from a different culture's point of view.
And it's all those little things, it's only those, it doesn't go against the philosophy that we've learned. It's nothing like it's
no. Yeah.
But it's just getting into each detail, getting into more depth, getting into more, putting words on what we're doing, and just being conscious of what we're doing all the time, right? That's part of the education.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess this is kind of a good segue into that program you're working with for apprentices in Canada, right? What is the official title of that program?
The AFTC is Amazing Farrier Training Canada.
Okay. I was like, man, you guys gonna come up with something better.
Just kidding. No. The AFTC means it's the Association for Farrier Training of Canada, and it's a great association that started probably 2 years ago with these guys out west, Will Klinging. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and
Yep, I think you're right.
Gerald Laverty, and a bunch of other guys.
I don't know if you're pronouncing that right. Yeah, sorry. Carry on.
No, and I guess I don't know where it started, but the desire to have a training system that's maybe Canadian, I guess, getting in there and helping our apprentice improve. So what it boiled down to was having 3-year curriculum of tests for apprentice after 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. What they should know. It's not, of course, it's not perfect, but it's a broad range of subject. Like there's a quiz, there's a hands-on part, there's an assessment part. So the assessment part, I was really happy with because it's the candidate needs to describe what he sees, and it's not like you have to know everything. It's an open discussion with the examinators, and so it's really based on a learning experience, but at the same time, it's a way of setting a standard. I guess the idea is just promoting education through this system.
That's really cool. So how does somebody apply for that?
I guess this year the first exam are going to be done, one out west, probably one in Ontario, one in Quebec. Because it's only starting, it's going to be the first exam. I guess the first apprentice that are willing to try the exam out are going to be more than welcome. And as it goes, well, the kids that get into it, or the farrier that get into it, because obviously if you've been showing for a few years, you can probably follow up and do the exam as a sort of a guideline on where you can improve. And don't get me wrong, this is all on a voluntary basis. I mean, there's nothing saying that this is going to be compulsory in any way. It's not going to happen because we just have a different reality than some of the countries that do that. I mean, it's so big. There's so many horses. There's so few people. So anyways, it's just on a voluntary basis that those who want to learn, it's a great way that it's motivating, I guess, to take an exam and go and learn stuff.
Yeah, it would be just like the AFA certifications. It's just another process, another place to figure out where your weak points are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, in the initial stages of that, I had heard that they had something they were trying to set up where they'd have you apprentice with various people throughout Canada. Is that still a thing, or has that sort of been replaced by just the exam?
No, it's the second phase, I guess, because of course the important thing would be that those that are taking the test are being followed or worked with the training farrier, and that is another part of the puzzle. I mean, how do you decide, or how do you get into organizing training farriers? So, and in my mind, in a few years with time, people will get interested in the test and will take the exam as they will. And it's for a working farrier that's been at it for a few years, it's not that hard. The third year, you still have to make handmaids. But even if you only do the second year, which you have to do a good job with keg shoes, I mean, it can still show that you're a designated farrier, that you're willing to train. And of course, after a while, if we have a list of training farrier, then the apprentice could travel to one and another for sure. Absolutely. It's a way to to have a list of people that want to help and that have been through the process already. But since it's only starting right now, it can't just happen all at once. It needs to be kind of trained for a few years, and then more people will be in it and more people will know about it. And in the end, it'd be amazing if the client would be the one asking, hey, are you part of an association or do you have a training? And this is how I guess we can get the success among the horse owner as well.
Yeah, for sure. You're right, a whole other aspect, because there have to be a pretty strong campaign of education, because I know most clients, unless you explain it to them, they don't even care what the letters behind your name mean. They don't understand, nor do they care. But no, that's really neat. And I guess it does have to grow from somewhere. So at what point can you become a training farrier? Do you have to pass that level 2 exam or all of them?
That would make sense that you have to pass the exam. And it doesn't mean that you have to do the test in front of everybody. Those tests can be done, in somebody's shop at somebody's examining facility. Then some guys can do part of the test. That I don't know. There's so many ways to go about this, And the other question is also like, I do some riding horses, some trail ride horses. I don't do any race plates. So if you want to learn race plates, well, I'm not the guy for you, and I'm never gonna be. So there's there's kind of the choice of what you want to do in your area, and if you want to shoe some jumpers, well, you need to find an area and somebody that works in that. But for the Association of Farrier Training Canada, it needs to grow, and as people get interested in it and do the exam, then they're gonna be able to train the new apprentice. And I guess at the beginning, though, those guys that have been competing and helping people and doing certification, they can see the test and they can help the apprentice, right?
Right. Is there a website set up for this yet, or that's still in the works as well?
There is a website. It's just out recently, I think. It's still under construction, but it should be out as soon as some dates are there.
Okay.
I'm not sure yet of the address and stuff.
Yeah, another cool thing that I understand about this program is that they actually have vets consulting on it as well.
So every exam, there's a part of it where the vet is gonna ask a few questions, and we're dealing with apprentice first, second, and third years, right? But still, on the third year, you should be able to see a good angle on an X-ray and be able to see that there is soul death or not, and basic stuff. The vets are not gonna be there to push you down. On the contrary, they're gonna be there and ask you a few questions, and hopefully comment, and you get something out of it, like a private clinic. That's kind of how I want to see it. Like, I'm going to be an examinator for the exam, and I don't want any candidate to leave being frustrated of the experience. I want them to leave with a sense of, okay, I need to practice this and I need to improve this, whether they're passing or not. And if we want to make it kind of not them judging the work, but you have an assessment you have to observe it and tell me what you're going to do with that hoof. If you do it, well, it's pretty obvious that you're doing a good job and you're passing. But if we all agree that you're not doing what you said and it didn't work out, well, maybe you need to work on stuff, and it's fine also. It's nothing bad. It's only we're there to help improve. So I don't want the people to be nervous and afraid. I'd love people to jump in and just try the experience and grow out of it.
No kidding. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Or once you know that the website's up, you'll have to let me know, and I'll make sure we post it.
Perfect.
On all of our social media stuff to make people aware. Before we do the short answer stuff, I was going to ask you, since this is the first time we've had a bilingual guest, I thought we could learn a few equestrian sentences en français. So if you had a client and they have a really crazy horse, how do you tell them in French that their horse is too crazy to do? What would be the sentence?
Well, in English, we say trank it or train it, right? So it'd be this pretty much the same.
Yeah. It's not right on the tip of
No,
your
I
tongue.
just keep it in my mind, right?
Right.
Let me think about it. Do you have another one?
What is the word for farrier in French?
Maréchal. Maréchal Ferrand.
Okay. And fair means iron, right?
Yeah, that's a hard one with the R there.
Yeah. As we learned earlier, I can barely pronounce your name properly. So English, we struggle with those hard R's.
Brian, so you see, Maréchal Ferrand is also a term from the French army, where I guess Maréchal is kind of a grade or a level, I guess, and the Ferrand would be related to hoof care. Back then, they were really, really taking care of everything that had to do with hoofs.
Oh, okay. Now, so pardon my English, or pardon my French, the Maréchal, would that be like the equivalent of blacksmith?
No. Forgeron. You see, that's a good question. Forgeron would be the blacksmith, and the forgeron would repair all kinds of tools as well as shoe horses.
Right.
But he has a much more blacksmithing skill. The Maréchal Ferrand is only the farrier taking care of the hoofs.
Just the hooves. Okay, gotcha. Okay, and then horseshoes. I think I know this one. They're fair, right?
Fer, which is the same word as iron, because fire is iron, so it's just the same word.
Okay, and how about horse?
Cheval.
All right. Well, and did you figure out how to tell somebody that the horse is too crazy to do?
When you say the horse is a charogne is like a nag. It's a horse you don't like. It's when you say that, the client is usually insulted that Fluffy is being called a charogne.
Are there any other slang words that you would use that are repeatable in dealing with horses?
Well, that usually comes with like a few beads of sweat and a few calices de tabarnak.
Right. Yeah, for those of you
The
that don't
charogne, right?
know, most French curse words all have to do with the church. Or was there anything else you wanted to cover?
The one quick one that I thought was interesting is where the French hind came from.
Let's discuss it.
So real quick, the French hind was another, and this is what I heard, but it was from the military, and those horses were parading on a hard ground for 6 to 8 hours. So I guess they came up with that square toe to help them over a long period of time on a hard ground. And as I mentioned earlier, that shoe was really forged out of small pieces of steel, just drawn out. They had 2 mastlets. The inside was fit real tight. The mastlet was burnt in really well, so those horses wouldn't take those shoes off while they were parading. And the outside was just kind of laid on top and fit a little bit full. So I thought that was kind of interesting to get that little piece of history from those guys we met.
Yeah, no kidding. Now, do you know why they started with the 2-inch? It was just easier than bumping it in? It would be easier to draw it out, or?
They just had like pieces of steel. That's where, I mean, the sources was the what started that. They would draw because they had big pieces of steel. They would, I don't know, they didn't have bar stocks, so they would forge shoes out of anything they could find back then in the during the war or whatever. Right. I mean, they were big pieces, and then from a wheel or from something else. So they had to draw all of that stuff out.
Wow. Yeah, that would have been interesting times. I'm sure there are probably a lot of shoes that we don't know about, but are like that somebody had to come up with on the fly, made out of scrap pieces of steel.
Yeah, and especially how they were made. You know, steel was expensive and labor was cheap, so they had strikers working in the shops all day.
Right. Now, I don't imagine your career would be very long if that was what you were doing all day long.
No, that was a hard life for sure.
No kidding. This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Tectorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, I read a book this winter. It was the 100-year-old man that escaped from his home. It was pretty funny, actually. It was kind of a Forrest Gump of a 100-year-old man that escapes his place, and he tells all of his life, and it's pretty wild where he met a bunch of people. Anyways, I guess that's one of the good books I've read lately.
Okay. What's your favorite brand of nails?
The nails, I like the Slim Blades, the Liberty.
Okay. What shoe sizes do you generally have to stock the most of?
Really between 0 and 5, I guess. I don't do too many 3 but was 0 to 2 and 4 and 5s. More 0, I guess.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 25% of my horses are in shoes, and out of that, I guess there's a bunch of 0, 1, and then some bigger.
That's interesting because I would say that mine are 2s and 3s. Probably the most, but it's kind of funny. Those are the two that you're not putting on. I didn't ask you this when we were talking about handmaids. Do you hand make shoes for the road or just keg shoes in your day-to-day?
I make some shoes in my shop, but at the horse very rarely. Some concave in the summer a little bit when I have time. It depends on, I used to put a little bit more handmaids on, now more keg shoes, and of course, like I like to make my bar shoes and my little modification that I need for specific horses, otherwise keg shoes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, this was actually something I thought of today. Is there something, a modification that you find you do a lot to keg shoes in your day-to-day?
Yeah, rolling the toe, like a salad bowl roll, or rocker toes, not so much. Usually I will kind of roll the whole toe, like the whole section will be kind of on an angle.
Yep.
And those little tap the heels back, spoon heels a little bit.
Yeah, okay. These are the things I think of as I'm working on horses. What's your favorite make of rasp?
Eller Legend.
Yeah, okay. What is your dream farrier rig?
I like the Sprinter.
Yeah, gotcha. Favorite rounding hammer?
I have a Derek Garner that I like, but that's only because I've been using it so much. But honestly, I like to be able to make my shoes with anything that's handy. So get used to a bunch of different tools and different stuff, right?
Right. Okay. Have you delved into the world of tool making yourself? It seems like it'd be right up your alley.
Well, I'm not that perfectionist, so I kind of like to make a few, but I don't want to spend so much time doing it. And so I kind of like to make a few tools just to appreciate how many details go into it. But I'm not the type of to spend hours on a pair of tongs or on a knife.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right. What's your favorite type of bar stock to work with? Like dimension or concave or straight or flat?
3878 would be my choice, if maybe just because it's not available out there. But we did have some at one point. It was really nice for those in between feet, right? Where 381 is a little big and 3/875 just seems a little bit too narrow.
Yep. I thought you were going to say 3/8x2. What's your favorite pastime after work?
Depending on the season. Winter, I like to snowshoe around, snowmobile, the Sugar Shack. Summer, just trail riding and with my motorbike.
Oh, okay. Yep. Like a dirt bike, or you actually like a road bike?
I have a semi-road, semi-trail, so it's a small dirt bike, but flashers, so you can go on the road. I'm not crazy to jump and stuff like that, but I live in the country where there's so many trails all over the place.
Oh, cool. What's the next thing on your bucket list?
I'd like to go to San Francisco with my girlfriend and just for a visit, and then Europe for shoemaking in wherever country I can go. Let's see where it takes us.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about this career. You can pretty much meet shoers anywhere, and they'll take you in.
Absolutely. You just have to ask, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. No, it's pretty incredible that way. What's your favorite brand of keg shoe?
I guess it varies. Honestly, I've been carrying this SX8 for a while, and it's kind of a bit of a reference for those type of feet, I guess. But I have like some SSP and some different kinds. I guess I like to have a few options. Those Equilibrium are pretty nice for some feet, though wider, maybe a little bit heavier, but some for those 2 and 3s that I shouldn't have too many, but they seem to be doing a good job.
Right. That's funny. What's your ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
I like to do 2 stops. You see, in 1 stop after 3, it's my ideal number, and then another stop with 1 or 2 would be good, but max, I mean, even 4 horses shot all around. It's a small day, but you have time. You can look at stuff. You can talk with the owner. You can stop for coffee. You're not late, and you don't have to be anywhere but there. And this is one of my for anybody, just cut down on a few horses and the quality just improves so much and the stress just goes down. It's crazy,
Yeah, and without that stress, it is amazing how much more you can see.
Absolutely.
Detail-wise,
being aware. Because really, when you're shoeing and you're just thinking about the next barn, you're just flying through, right? It's just a job anymore.
Right. Yeah. It can kill your fun, for sure. Do you have a favorite anvil?
No, not really. I'm a bit of a collectioner. I have like 3 or 4, I guess, 4, 1 outside, 3 in the shop, and they all have their size and history, and just working on different horns, I guess, taught me how to use the horn, and then it's not anymore so much of how the horn looks more than where you hit on it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote?
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, or slow down to speed up, stuff like that, or safety third. I like that
too. Right. I could hear your cat. You must have a cat there.
Yeah.
Mine actually ruined a podcast one time. I was interviewing a guy and my cat hopped up on the table and knocked everything over and ruined the cord. We had to wait until I could order a new one before we could finish the conversation. So they're locked out right now. Do you have a dog? Do you have a Farrier Terrier?
No, honestly, the cat is outside all the time and he eats mice. That's why we have him. I'm just so much on the road, I wouldn't want to have a dog, really. It's just such a life and just driving all the time and being away from home,
Yeah. If you're stumped on a case or need backup, who do you call?
So, yeah, that's a good question. I have a few farrier friends, one that's in the area, a few that are not in the area, or I communicate with either the vet or otherwise. You just take the info and you try the best, I guess.
Yeah, give it your best shot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite shoe package? Now, I know we've brought it up several times that it really depends on the horse, but do you have a favorite shoe package for a mystery lameness when the client doesn't, get the vet out to give it a proper diagnosis? Or
I guess I like to trim the horse and then tell the owner, if in 2-3 days it's not better, give me a call. And they usually don't call back.
Really?
No, I'm kidding. In the sense that if the horse is lame, call me back. If the horse is going well, I mean, it's fine. Just let him be. And so I guess giving time is a good one. With sometimes, of course, we're not talking about an acute laminitic, but any kind of, sometimes a little treatment, a trim, or your client calls you in emergency and Listen, I'll try to be there as early as I can, but just give it a few days and let's see what happens. And most of the times it gets better, so.
Rectifies itself.
Yep.
Yeah, that is a good one. Time can help. What do you use as your planner or agenda?
I'm the paper type. I got some Post-it and the paper agenda, but I like to mark my weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it starts again. So I always rebook, so some horses that are on the 6 weeks are always going to be on week 1, and some horses that I kind of move around on 4-week cycle are kind of jumping around. But this way, it's kind of clear, and I can even plan like 3 cycles ahead if I wanted to. Just put those names in place, and you get that kind of a rough idea of who's going to be when.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
A little bit of stretching, a hot bath, need a beer after a big day, and I guess not doing it 2 days in a row.
Not having the big days 2 days in a row?
Exactly. You don't want to bunch up a bunch of horses 2-3 days in a row. I mean, once in a while it's fine, but quit while you're ahead, right? It's always when you're too tired and you say, "Oh, I'll do just 1, 2, 3 more," and then that's when you hurt yourself. Really, was it worth it? I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Do you have a favorite drink?
No, honestly, I like a beer, and depending on the day, a warm a grog, right? A warm grog on a winter day.
A grog? What's a grog?
What's the name in English? It's just like hot water, lemon, honey, and gin, or vodka.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So that's for the winter days.
To warm you up on the inside.
There you go.
Do you have a favorite genre of music?
Varied, but I like when it moves, rock or punk. A little fan of the punk music, old style.
Okay. Now, would it be in English or French?
Most of it is English, but we've got some really good French music, really good French alternative music for sure.
Oh yeah, some of my favorite bands are from Montreal. It seems like a lot of great music comes from your province. Do you work out?
Not really, but I am active. We like to ice skate, walk in the forest, and I should stretch more. I want to do it. I used to swim a bunch, but not anymore. But I like to take that up. It's a good exercise just to move like a different posture than what we're working, right?
Yeah.
But no, not that much anymore,
Okay. What would you have been if not a farrier?
Yeah, who knows, right? Just life takes you.
A grumpy baker?
Yeah. No, I had to change for sure. Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question, really.
Okay.
We'll find out, I guess. If I can still shoe some horses when I'm 75, I'll be happy. I doubt it, but at the same time, having some apprentice and some younger farrier around is really fun. So we never know.
Yeah, for sure. How long have you been doing it? I guess we never really covered that.
I've been shoeing for 12 years now, full time. Since I've left, I did 2 months in Oklahoma in Purcell. And then I went back to Heartland once or twice for a 2-week course and traveled a bunch of places to different little clinics.
Okay. We pretty much have been shoeing about the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I didn't know that. For some reason, I thought you'd been shoeing longer.
No.
Than that.
Well, it seems like a while when you bend down and you feel like, okay, I'm at work. Shit. Still trimming some hoofs,
Right, yep. So I guess the final COVID question, if you were stuck in a shop for a month with somebody, who would you want it to be?
Well, there's a bunch of guys that I don't know that I would like to learn from, but I don't know them. But I did meet John Atkinson one time, and he's a really cool dude to hang with. And there's a lot of guys those guys from New Hampshire and Vermont, Mark Schneider and Tim McPhee, are some really, really cool, really good hand too. And then out west, there's so many guys, you know. I don't know. I couldn't come down with one name really.
Right. Yeah,
with
yeah.
you, Brian, I'd love to spend a month with you in the shop.
Oh, that'd be fun. I don't know
There
if
you
we'd
go.
have a shop left. Yeah, that would be fun.
Absolutely.
I would hope by the end of that month I'd be able to pronounce my R's better when I was speaking French.
Don't worry about it. It's not the. It really never worried me, really, the pronunciation or the name, really. Well, I guess there is a right pronunciation, but it doesn't matter much.
Yeah, it's never been a thing. Well, hey, I really appreciate that you took the time to do this. I know it's been a while in the works, but I'm glad it finally happened.
Absolutely. No, it was great.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.